Today, we are going to talk about a super simple but really powerful way to stop arguments dead in their tracks. We're not talking about how to win an argument. Forget that. We're going to talk about how to completely re-architect the conversation itself for peace. You know that feeling, right? Where you're just stuck in this argument spin cycle. The temperature in the room starts to rise, your logic feels like this impenetrable armor, and suddenly, you're not even talking to each other anymore. You're just talking past each other, and it feels like everything you say just makes things worse. Well, there's a name for what's happening. It's called the conflict loop. Think about it. Your point hits their defense, right? That triggers their counterattack, which then slams into your defense. And with every single exchange, you're just adding more energy, more heat. The loop just gets tighter and faster until you're both completely exhausted and absolutely nothing has been solved. So how in the world do you break out of this cycle? Well, the secret is actually kind of counterintuitive. It turns out that our natural reactions, the things we do automatically when we feel like we're being attacked, they're actually the problem. They're literally the fuel for the fire. Just look at these. They're so common, right? When someone criticizes us, our first instinct is to defend ourselves. We say things like, no, you're totally missing the point. Or we go on the counterattack. Oh yeah, well, what about that time you did this? Or my personal favorite. We just minimize their feelings. You're getting way too upset about this. Every single one of these just pours gasoline on that conflict loop. So here is the most important shift you have to make. The goal is not to win the argument. It's not even about getting the other person to agree with you. The real goal is just to hit the pause button. It's about interrupting the pattern so you can both step out of the boxing ring and look at the problem side by side instead of face to face. Okay, so how do we actually do that? This brings us to our very first tool. It's a simple sentence, but it shifts the entire dynamic from a battle to an exploration. It's not a demand, it's an invitation. You see, our first instinct is just to yell louder, right? You need to understand my position. We just want to broadcast our point of view until it finally sinks in. But the real architectural shift here is to do the exact opposite. Instead of demanding to be heard, you invite their perspective in. And here it is. Help me understand how you see this. Just let that phrase sit for a second. It is so powerful because it completely changes your role in the conversation. You're no longer the broadcaster, you're the receiver. You're not saying explain yourself, which sounds like an accusation. You're saying I am choosing to be curious right now because how you see this matters to me. So why does this little phrase work so well? First off, it's an invitation. It automatically validates the other person. It says, I see that you have a perspective and I actually want to understand it. That immediately lowers their defenses. It also changes the entire goal of the conversation from winning to just getting clear. All of a sudden, you're not trying to score points anymore. You're on a fact-finding mission to get the blueprint of how they're thinking. Okay, so you've used the first sentence, you've invited their perspective in, and you've actually listened. Now what? Well, this second sentence, this is where the magic really happens. This is what you might call the master stroke. It's the move that truly changes the entire game. After they've shared their side of things, and this is key, before you jump back in with all of your points, you say this. Thank you for sharing that with me. I'm realizing my part in this is, and then you just fill in the blank. It could be something like that I came in way too hot, or maybe that I didn't realize the pressure you were under. What you're doing here is a concept called modeling accountability. And this is so important. You are not taking 100% of the blame, you're not surrendering, you're simply identifying your slice of the dynamic. And by doing that, you completely de-weaponize yourself. You're showing them that you're willing to be vulnerable, and that makes it so much easier for them to even consider their own part in it. And the result of doing this is, well, it's profound. The entire script just flips. It is no longer a battle of you versus me. By modeling accountability, you've completely realigned the conversation. Now it's both of you, standing on the same side, looking at the problem together. So let's put it all together now. These two sentences create a simple but incredibly powerful tool that you can pull out anytime you feel that heat starting to rise in a conversation. It really is a clear two-step process. First, you interrupt the pattern. You invite their perspective in. Stop broadcasting, start receiving. Then, once you've listened, you model accountability by owning your piece of what happened. It's like a 1-2 punch that stops that conflict loop cold. Let's just look at how this plays out in a quick scenario. In the reactive conversation, person A attacks, person B immediately defends, and boom, you're in the conflict loop. But in the re-architected version, person A hits pause. They use that first sentence. Help me understand how this looked from your side. And it completely changes the energy of the whole exchange. And here's the crucial follow-through. After listening, person A doesn't argue back. They model accountability. They say something like, okay, I'm realizing my part in this is that I didn't flag how those changes would impact the timeline. Can't you just feel the tension dissolve? The war is over. Nobody won, but now they can actually solve the problem together. And this, I think, is the most important takeaway of all. These sentences, they aren't conversational tricks. This isn't about manipulation. They are tools for building stronger, more honest communication. They stop that reactive cycle, and they create this tiny moment of shared humanity, which, let's be honest, is the only foundation that anything good can ever be built on. So I'll leave you with a question to think about. Of these two powerful sentences, which one feels harder for you to say, and why? Is it harder to truly invite someone else's reality in, or is it harder to own your part of the dynamic? The answer to that can tell you a lot about your own architecture of communication.